6 spine-chilling babysitter horror stories exposing sinister secrets and unexplained terrors. The doorbell's chime echoed through the Stevens family's home, but it felt wrong, like a warning rather than a greeting. Sarah stood on the doorstep, her heart hammering in her chest. A cracked door swayed slightly, revealing a darkened foyer. She dismissed the chill creeping down her spine. After all, she was just a college student earning some extra cash babysitting 2 kids who lived in a seemingly perfect suburb of Ohio. The bright flowers and trimmed hedges were like an invitation to a calming evening. But, as Sarah stepped inside, a thick tension replaced the warm sense of security. The children, 2 lively tots named Tyler and Mia, bounded toward her, grinning with excitement. What could go wrong? They played for a while, but soon giggles turned into whispering. They exchanged furtive glances, casting eyes towards the dim corners of the living room, where shadows danced as the last light of day faded. "Bad babysitter," Tyler hissed, and the 2 erupted into hushed laughter. Sarah's heart raced. Was it just a game, or was there something sinister lurking in their innocent words? The sudden ringing of her phone startled her. It was Mr. Wilkins, the friendly old neighbor. "Sarah," he said, breathless, "get them and leave. I saw someone lurking outside." Panic gripped at her throat. She glanced at the kids, their expressions eerily calm now. What does he mean? She thought. The eerie laughter still echoed, mixing with Mr. Wilkins' warning in her mind. Dismissing it as mere anxiety, she was determined to prove herself a responsible babysitter. "Let us play a game, you guys," she suggested, but Tyler and Mia shook their heads. They whispered to each other again, words hanging heavy in the air. "You know what happens to bad babysitters?" they asked, their voices dropping to a conspiratorial tone that made Sarah's skin crawl. The mention of a man lingered in her mind, a horrifying town legend she remembered hearing, filled with horrifying tales about babysitters being taken away for breaking rules. Suddenly, her phone buzzed violently yet again. "Sarah," Mr. Wilkins' trembling voice shattered the air, "don't trust anything. Get out of there. The man, you don't know what he'll do." The children fell silent as if absorbing his words, their faces utterly blank. Sarah's blood turned to ice. What kind of game were they playing? The shadows pressed closer, as if mocking her defensive exhalations. Before she could think further, the chilling joke came to life. The previously inviting home felt as if it had transformed into a predator. The flickering lights began to dim, as though the house itself was consuming the last warmth of day. She could hear the wind rustling outside, but then a sinister whisper curled around her ear. "Stay just a little longer." Her breath caught, and her instincts screamed it was time to escape. The door loomed larger, and the moment she began to move, a low creaking echoed from the top of the staircase. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Sarah's heart pounded louder than her thoughts. The children's eyes turned towards the staircase, vacant yet expectation-filled, as if something more than a sinister presence awaited them. She felt suffocated by a curtain of dread. The realization hit her. The danger wasn't merely outside, it was inside her own mind, conjured by their eerie words and the creeping shadows. Was the real threat lurking just beyond the broken door, or did it dwell within this charming suburban facade waiting, watching, hungry for a babysitter who defied the rules? The night stretched on, the air heavy with unspoken horrors as Sarah steeled herself for whatever terrifying revelation awaited her in those darkened corners. A chill ran through Sarah as she stood frozen in the entryway, the shadows swirling around her with newfound menace. She felt every heartbeat thrumming in her ears, drowning out the whisper of the wind outside. Those kids, they weren't acting normal. They were different, changed by some unseen force lurking in the shadows. "Stay just a little longer," the voice had been soft, yet every syllable was drenched in malice, as though it was gnawing at her sanity. Gulping down her fear, she forced herself to stride toward the staircase. Each step felt heavier, as if the house itself sought to bind her to its sinister will. Tyler, Mia, "Let us go," but her words were met with an unsettling stillness. The children stayed huddled, gazing intently at the staircase as if it was a portal to another realm. "Don't go up there," Tyler's voice slithered through the silence, sharp and warning. "The man is waiting. He likes fresh babysitters who don't know the rules." Sarah's pulse raced. Their game was far too real, too dark. She felt a shiver ripple down her spine as cold dread pressed at her thoughts. She refused to succumb. "You're just joking, right?" she said, forcing a smile that felt as fragile as glass. "No." Mia's eyes glinted with something otherworldly, as if she held a secret that transcended her playful innocence. "We've seen him." With her back to the staircase, Sarah kept her gaze rooted to the children, desperate to ignore the urge to look behind her. Watching them was like staring into a void, deepening her unease. Had they truly seen something? Or were their minds twisted in a game too sinister for her to comprehend? "You shouldn't ignore him," Mia continued, her tone light, yet chilling. "He's always watching, waiting for someone to break the rules." "Nope. Not gonna play anymore." Sarah bolted towards the living room, nearly stumbling over a toy truck strewn carelessly across the floor. She could hear the murmurs between the kids, an ominous chant building like a sinister melody. "Sarah," the voice echoed from the shadows of the staircase again, lower this time, dripping with a cold intent. "Stay with us, you're in trouble now." Panic took hold of her like a vice. She grabbed her phone, intent on calling Mr. Wilkins back, but it slipped through her clammy fingers, clattering to the ground before dying with a faint buzz. The house seemed to quiver, exhaling its chilling breath around her. "I think," Tyler's voice trembled. "He thinks you're the bad babysitter." A low growl reverberated from above, sending Sarah's heart racing. Reality warped around her, a fog rolled in, and she felt disoriented, as if the walls themselves were closing in. She turned toward the door, barely a few steps away, but as she moved, the children's laughter erupted again, sharp and piercing, freezing her in place. "Don't go, Sarah," they chimed in unison, their voices intertwining in an eerie harmony. You want like what happens to bad babysitters in that moment. As the shadows grew bolder, she glimpsed something shift at the top of the staircase, a figure, dark and slumped, its outline barely visible, but emanating a presence that made her stomach knot. She stumbled backward, breathless, but it was as if the house held a grip on her. Every muscle in her body fought her instinct to flee. The air thickened, a tangible terror swirled all around. "What do you want?" she shouted, the tremor in her voice contrasting the mask of determination she tried to uphold. "You'll find out soon enough," a deep voice rumbled back, chilling her to the bone. Something dark and twisted awaited, dancing just beyond her vision. Sarah's heart raced, and with a deep breath, she prepared herself for the truth. But before she could grasp it, the lights flickered violently, plunging her into darkness. The echoes of giggles spiraled into chaos, a cacophony of torment filling the air, and she realized the man was already inside. What was this darkness? What rules had she overlooked? As she felt the gaze of unseen eyes upon her, one question loomed above the rising panic. Could she uncover the truth in time, or would she become just another part of the game? The darkness felt alive, an oppressive weight that pushed down on Sarah, squeezing the very breath from her lungs. She was trapped in a void filled with chaos and whispers, the children's laughter now twisted into shrieks that echoed off the walls in a rhythm that sent chills down her spine. "Tyler! Mia!" she called out, but there was no response, only that laughter, cruel and mocking. Each sound she made seemed to dissolve into the growing shadows. Heart pounding, she took a few uncertain steps further into the living room, her hands scrambling along the wall for some kind of support. The chills skated over her forearms, raising goosebumps like a warning. Suddenly, a thud resonated above her, a heavy footfall that felt like a countdown. He was coming. "Stay with us," the voice from the staircase echoed, growing fainter as if retreating, but the menace remained coiling around her with malicious intent. She fought every instinct that screamed for her to run, feeling instead a morbid compulsion to search for light, for clarity in the all-consuming dark. The living room was a jigsaw of phantoms, silhouettes bending and warping under the flickering shadows. In the corner, a dim light flickered, barely illuminating an old rocking chair that seemed to sway of its own accord. Entranced, Sarah moved toward it, hoping for some sign of safety. Her knees shaking with every step that she willed herself forward. The sound of children's whispers filled the air again, wrapping around her like a cold embrace. Don't look for him. Mia's voice threaded through the darkness, syrupy sweet, but laced with a frenzy that made Sarah's heart skip. He knows you're here, he can feel you. Panic ignited in her chest, pooling into raw fear. Stop it. Stop playing, she yelled, even as doubt crept into her mind. What if they weren't playing? What if there really was something lurking beyond the shadows? Her eyes flicked back toward the staircase, now an avalanche of blackness. She envisioned that slumped figure at the top, waiting, watching. What do you want from me? She shouted into the void, but there was no answer. Then, a swift movement caught her eye, a shadow darting from one room to another, quick and silent like a predator stalking its prey. Adrenaline surged, and without thinking, she bolted back toward the door, her panicked breaths echoing around her. The door was inches away, but the air thickened, each step feeling like wading through water. She reached for the knob, fingers trembling. Almost there, but suddenly, a cold grip seized her shoulder. Where do you think you're going? A raspy voice rasped just behind her. Chills spiraled down her spine as she turned slowly, dread pooling in her stomach. The face that stared back was all wrong, twisted and hollow, smiling without warmth. Bad babysitters don't get to leave, it hissed, breath foul like decay. Her instincts screamed to run, but her legs remained frozen, caught in the web of terror spun by the malevolent entity. With a force of will, she ripped her shoulder free, her breath catching in her throat as she hurled herself toward the staircase, intent on confronting the darkness. Was this the man feeding off their fear? As she dashed up the steps, the shadows twisted, climbing the walls like serpents, eager to pull her into their depths. The children's voices melded into a haunting chorus, echoing her name, blurring the line between friend and foe. Sarah, you can't run from him. Each step reverberated with uncertainty. She was diving into an abyss, one that promised the truth, but also the potential for her undoing. What awaited her at the top? Could she find a way to break this spell before it consumed her whole? As she reached for the final step, a piercing laugh shattered the air, an unnerving promise that sent shivers racing down her spine. The game was far from over. The moment she set foot on the landing, she could feel it, the pulse of the house, and the darkness was alive. What truth lay behind the next door, waiting to be unveiled? Or would the man who hunted now claim his prize? The air on the second floor was different, thick and stale, as though it hadn't been disturbed in years. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribcage, each beat reminding her of the imminent threat. The walls closed in as if the house was itself a living creature, breathing heavily with anticipation, watching her every move. The children's voices still lingered, more desperate now, reverberating in her ears. Sarah, you're in danger, they seemed to whisper, weaving a web around her mind that threatened to pull her under. She stood at the top of the stairs, the landing stretching before her into a hallway lined with doors, each one a potential abyss. The laughter that had twisted into terror below now echoed louder, taunting her. Find us, Sarah, if you can. The door on her left was ajar, a sliver of darkness pulsing with an odd rhythm. She felt drawn to it, like a moth to flame, yet she hesitated. The shadows seemed to swirl around it, hungry and alive. Is this where it all ends? She thought. Just as she decided to step forward, a door down the hall creaked open, slow and deliberate. A figure stood there, half illuminated by a flickering bulb behind it. At first, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Could it be Tyler? Mia? But as her eyes adjusted, the face came into focus. The features were all too familiar, but twisted. A ghastly grin split the face of the shadowed figure. I found you, it screeched, and in that moment, Sarah knew it was not her brother or sister standing before her. It was the man, the one who thrived on fear. Instinct took over, and she turned to run, but the shadows surged forward, an invisible force wrapping around her ankles like chains, yanking her back. The hallway distorted, stretching and warping, filling with the echoes of her sprinting heart. What do you want? She screamed at the darkness, her voice thin amidst the chaos. Let me go? Silence fell, thick and suffocating, before a laugh broke through, chilling her blood. You shouldn't have come here. The words dripped with malice. You're part of the game now. The laughter pulsed, reverberating off the walls until they seemed to throb with it. The doors on either side began to rattle, shadows clawing at the frames, and through the cracks she saw fleeting images. A glimpse of a child's face twisted in anguish, a flash of an open, decaying mouth screaming in silent agony. "Tyler! Mia!" she called again, her voice breaking, desperation puncturing her resolve. Was that her brother's name mingling with the shadows? Then, from the door directly across from her, she heard a whisper that chilled her to the core. "Help us!" Sarah, her breath caught again, weighted by dread. Could she trust it? The voice was unmistakably Mia's, laced with a fear that threatened to drown her. What if this is a trap? Sarah thought, but the need to find her siblings pulled her closer. She fought the shackles of doubt as she edged toward the door. "Come on, Sarah. Hurry," the voice urged, now tinged with urgency. There was no room for hesitation. She gripped the knob tightly, heart racing as she twisted it. The door swung open, revealing a pitch-black room, an abyss waiting for her. Into the void she plunged, stepping over the threshold where the air thickened once more, a waiting silence wrapping around her like a shroud. The shadows welcomed her, beckoning her deeper. Sarah, the voice was clearer now, but something felt off. It's safe here, but she sensed another presence. The chilling realization that the man could be anywhere. Could he be behind her? Watching her, plotting? As the door slammed shut behind her, the darkness shifted, and she was seized by a primal terror. In that moment, she felt a cold hand grip her heart, squeezing tighter. The house was alive, and so was he. Was the darkness too strong for her to escape? Would she uncover the truth, or become another lost soul trapped within the walls of this haunted nightmare? The darkness was suffocating, an oppressive weight pressing down on Sarah as she stumbled into the unknown room. She blinked, straining her eyes amid the pitch black, but nothing appeared to shift. A creeping panic rose. She could feel the house watching, its breath heavy and burdened. "Mia?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The air felt static, charged with something malevolent. Her heart raced, every beat echoing in the void, and she wanted to scream, to run. But moving meant accepting that she was truly alone. Over here the voice beckoned again, lingering just out of reach. She strained to locate its source, stepping gingerly forward, her foot connecting with something soft and yielding. A shiver coursed through her as her fingers brushed against the surface, something warm, something squirming. Sarah recoiled, yanking back her hand. What was that? The darkness chuckled, low and mocking, a sound formless and sinister. Before she could catch her breath, a flicker of light ignited in one corner of the room. It was a feeble glow, but it pulsed like a heartbeat, illuminating the outlines of faces. They pressed against the walls, contorted and wailing silently as their mouths opened wide. The sight of them twisted Sarah's stomach into knots. Their eyes were wide with terror, reflecting back her own anguish. "Help us!" they cried in unison, but their voices were merged with an unsettling echo, like a show reel of despair that repeated endlessly. "No!" she shouted, staggering backward. "Stop it!" But their faces bore the weight of endless sorrow. She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the pull of the darkness and the hopeless pleas surrounding her. Was she losing herself? Gritting her teeth against the surge of fear, she glanced around. The flickering light beckoned her closer, drawing her in with an insistent whisper. Slowly, she curled her fingers around the edge of a nearby table. The surface felt textured, slick. How had the house become so familiar? There was a thud heavy and damp as she brushed against an old lamp that clattered to the floor. It shattered, releasing a wave of memories. Laughter, warmth, safety. Distant recollections of family during happier times. The scent of cookies baking. The sound of her mother calling them for dinner. The voice of darkness cut through her thoughts sharply. "That is a nice memory. I isn't it? But they are gone. It's just you now." The thick laughter echoed, the shadows pulsating with life around her. "Stop it!" she screamed, the sound lost in the depths. She tore her gaze from the faces and focused on the dim light, resolving to approach it. Every step was a battle against the lure of despair, against the chilling caress of the shadows that clung to her like a second skin. When she reached it, the light flickered more brightly, revealing a small glass sphere resting on a pedestal. In its depths swirled a murky fog that seemed alive, writhing like the shadows. She could see fleeting images: a child's smile, a swinging door, a plate of food untouched on a faded table. A sudden flash of recognition broke through Tyler's face. "Help us!" The chorus rose again, gathering force. Could it be a ruse? Or was this their chance? Desperation surged within her. With trembling hands, she raised a finger toward the sphere, but just before she could touch it, everything went dark once more. The sinister whisper brushed against her ear, chilling her to the bone. "You shouldn't have come. Now you'll never leave." Suddenly, the room began to shift. The walls creaked ominously as they inched closer. With nowhere left to run, Sarah's breath quickened again, panic rising like bile in her throat. Somewhere, far beyond the dark, she heard children singing, but their voices were twisted, cruel. "You're one of us now, Sarah?" Forever? Could she resist? Or would the darkness consume her completely? In a last-ditch effort, she called out for her siblings, her voice raw with fear and determination. "Tyler, Mia, I will find you." But the only response was the echo of her own despair, reverberating in an empty void. The shadows tightened, squeezing out the last vestiges of hope. And just then, a hand brushed against her back, cold, clammy, and unmistakably not her own. What awaited her in the arms of the unknown? The cold hand gripped Sarah's shoulder, and an icy breath whispered in her ear, skin prickling with dread. Fear rooted her to the spot, heart galloping. She spun around, ready to confront whatever lay behind her. But the darkness just shifted, folding against itself like a living thing, and she saw nothing. "Who's there?" Sarah's voice trembled, laced with the thin thread of defiance. The laughter continued, swelling around her, dark and heavy. It echoed off the walls like a twisted melody, mocking her courage. Then, the grip on her shoulder tightened, and she felt the sharp pressure of nails digging into her skin. "Sarah," a voice hissed, a whisper slithering through the air, mingling with the darkness. "Don't you want to see?" "What?" She shot back, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "See what?" Before she could process the words, shadows flared to life, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. In a blink, they morphed into figures: children, their expressions twisted in anguish, eyes sunken and fearful. They reached for her, mouths moving in a silent scream. "Stay away," she cried, backing up against the wall. They dissolved into the dark once more, and dread pooled in her stomach, a heavy stone dragging her into despair. Then she heard a familiar voice, soft, like a beacon in the storm. "Sarah, help us!" It was Mia. "Mia?" She felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. "I'm coming." She turned, driven by raw determination, and dared to move deeper into the oppressive darkness, instinct guiding her. Every step made her feel as though she was walking through a graveyard of lost souls, the air thick with despair. As she plunged deeper into the gloom, she stumbled upon a staircase. The wood creaked ominously beneath her feet, sending shivers up her spine. She hesitated, the dim light from the sphere behind her fading. Treading carefully, she descended the stairs. The air grew colder, more suffocating with every step. Just below, the darkness coiled, alive. Whispers filtered through, intertwining like thorns. They promised safety, solace, a way out. "Don't listen," she shouted. "I won't be fooled." Her own voice echoed back, swallowed by the shadows. Finally, she reached the bottom, where a door loomed. It throbbed with the same pulsing light she'd seen above. She felt drawn to it, the glow flickering with urgency. But a chill swept through her. Something in her gut screamed to run. "What's behind the door?" she asked herself, barely above a whisper. Something primal urged her to turn back. But what if Mia was beyond it? What if Tyler was there too? Summoning every ounce of courage, she stepped closer. The door felt warm against her palm, pulsing like a heartbeat. She breathed deeply, mentally preparing herself. With a swift motion, she flung it open, and light flooded the area, illuminating a horrifying scene. The walls were lined with photographs of her family, her friends' faces twisted with terror, each captured moment a testament to sorrow. In the center of the room stood Mia and Tyler, their expressions blank, eyes wide and hollow. They turned slowly, mouths moving without sound. "Sarah," they whispered in unison, voices merging into a single, haunting tone. They were no longer the siblings she remembered. Something seemed to hang behind their smiles, something dark and insatiable. What have you done to them? Sarah screamed, stepping back in horror. Join us, the shadows coiled around her, preparing to pull her into their depths. But deep down, a fire burned. Sarah clenched her fists. I'll never give in. And then, the floor beneath her trembled, cracking open, sending her tumbling into a chasm where light and darkness fought for dominance. As she fell, the last thing she saw was her siblings reaching for her, their fingers stretching into the void, desperate and pleading. Would she ever escape? Or would the darkness swallow her whole, leaving nothing but echoes of the family she once knew? What would she find at the bottom of the pit? The darkness consumed her, swirling, tugging at her mind like a thread unraveled. Sarah fell deeper, disoriented, the air thick with the scent of decay. Whispers clawed at her ears, fragments of voices intertwining to form a haunting melody that seeped into her bones. Join us, be one of us. She hit the ground with a thud, the impact jarring her, sending pain radiating through her joints. The floor felt soft, as if it was made of flesh. Panic surged within her, but she fought to gather her wits. Slowly, she pushed herself up, blinking against the swirling shadows. Around her were walls lined with mirrors, reflecting fractured images of her past. The faces were familiar but distorted, warped like funhouse reflections. Her parents loomed large, their smiles twisted into grotesque grins. Mia and Tyler appeared, eyes wide and pleading, yet hollow. Stop, she shouted, her voice cracking, but the echoes seemed to delight in her despair. This isn't real. Isn't it? A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man shrouded in darkness. He stepped into the dim light, and Sarah gasped. It was the face of her father, but it wasn't him. It couldn't be. His expression was vacant, skin stretched taut, devoid of warmth. You abandoned us, Sarah. You chose to let us fade. No, she cried, covering her ears, desperate to block out the sound. I can't lose you. Join us. The chorus of whispers grew more intense, their tones weaving around her like vines, pulling her into their web. We can be together again. A shrill scream, Mia's voice, pierced through the chaos. Sarah, we're trapped. You must break the cycle. Break the cycle? She echoed, uncertainty flooding her. What cycle? Realization clicked, putting ice in her veins. The photographs, the visions her family had been taken because of her choice to remain, bound to the darkness. Please. Mia's voice broke through the fog. Save yourself before it's too late. Summoning courage, Sarah pushed against the shadows, willing the tendrils to retreat. I refuse to be part of this nightmare, she shouted, each word laced with defiance. The world began to shift around her. Screams of outrage echoed as the darkness recoiled. You think you can escape? The shadow of her father loomed over her, anger flashing across his malformed features. You are part of this now. But she saw a glimmer of light, a doorway shimmering faintly in the distance. It pulsed with warmth, promising freedom. Ignoring the shadows clawing at her, she ran, her heart pounding like thunder. Breaking through the darkness, she dashed towards the light, desperation fueling each frantic step. The echoes of her family's voices faded, but the shadows swirled more violently, ensnaring her, their whispers rising to a crescendo. You will never leave. Sarah lunged forward, tears mingling with the sweat on her brow. She reached the threshold, stretching out her hand just as the shadows closed in. The darkness screamed in rage, a sound that shook the walls, threatening to pull her into the void. The light enveloped her as she stepped forward, frantic, barely catching a glimpse of her siblings still trapped behind the overwhelming darkness. I'll find you, she vowed, her voice ringing out like a battle cry. And then, everything went white. She found herself on the floor of her childhood room, gasping for breath. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the faded remnants of innocence hung on the walls. But something felt off. The air was too still, the world too quiet, as if it were holding its breath, and then she heard it. A soft, familiar whisper just beyond the door. Sarah, help us. The shadows lingered at the corners of her mind, and fear gripped her heart. Had she truly escaped? Or had she merely awoken from one nightmare to another? Was the darkness now lurking just outside her door, waiting for her to slip and fall once more? Her heart raced, each beat thundering in her ears. Sarah stared at the door, the whisper lingering like a ghost, both familiar and unsettling. Was she dreaming? Or had she made a grave mistake by running from the darkness only to find herself trapped in a different form of it? With hesitation, she crossed the room, the wooden floor creaking underfoot as if warning her to stay away. Each step reverberated through her, mixing apprehension and dread. Was Mia really calling for her? Could she trust what she heard? "Sarah, help us," the voice called again, more insistent this time, layering fear upon fear. It sounded like Mia, or at least like her echoes from the other side. She hesitated, fingers brushing against the cold doorknob. A part of her wanted to run back to the safety of the corners of her memories, while the other screamed of urgency and love to find her family, to save them. Taking a deep breath, she turned the knob. The door swung open with a languid creak, revealing an empty hallway shrouded in an unnatural gloom. The air felt heavier. It clung to her skin like cold sweat. She stepped out, heart in her throat, gazing down the corridor lined with pictures of happier times. "Is anyone there?" Sarah's voice cracked, then faded. As if in response, the house sighed. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like wisps of smoke. They sounded seductive, beckoning her to uncover secrets that had long lain buried. Following the whispers, she moved toward the end of the hallway where a flickering light seeped from beneath the door. "Mia?" she called, voice barely above a whisper. No answer came, but a chill ran down her spine, the atmosphere thickening as she purposely tiptoed close. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from behind, causing her to spin around. The shadows coiled tighter, as if hungry for her fear. The door behind her slammed shut, plunging her into darkness. She felt it closing in, an invisible force pushing against her resolve. No. Fighting against the urge to scream, she turned back to the door where the light flickered. The knob shook in her hand, resisting her attempt to turn it. "Let me in," she cried, panic lacing her tone. The whispers crescendoed, sounding almost angry, hurling accusations she couldn't comprehend. The whispers began to unravel her memories, flooding back those pieces she had long tried to forget. Images of her family's last night together, the terrible accident, the promise she had made to protect them. Each moment felt like a blade twisting deeper. Little did she know, hidden just beyond the threshold of that door was a chilling truth, one that could shatter her already fragile sanity. With a desperate yell, she pushed the door, this time with all her strength. The door swung open, revealing a shadowy room illuminated by the wavering light. Mia stood there, eyes wide with terror. "Sarah, you shouldn't have come." The room warped and vibrated at her words, and Sarah felt a pull toward her sister, but something, an unseen barrier, kept them apart. "What is happening?" she shouted, desperation tipping her voice into a tremor. "It's a trap. Don't let it in," Mia cried, and before Sarah could comprehend her words, shadows erupted from the corners of the room, swirling like a raging storm, lunging forward. "Help us," the whispers screamed, but amidst the chaos, a familiar voice broke through Sarah. With a jolt, she realized the danger was not just around her, but within her. The darkness wasn't an external force. It wanted her to join it, to succumb to the despair and guilt, and maybe even condemn her family to remain trapped forever. "Stop," she shouted, forcing herself to focus, the memory of her mother's embrace fueling her resolve. "I am not yours." As she fought against the shadows, she glanced at the doorway. It had started to flicker again, light pulsing as if it beckoned her to make a choice. With each ounce of strength left, she screamed, "I will break this cycle." But just as she felt a flicker of triumph, the shadows recoiled and roared, "We will not let you." The light pulsed again, brightening and crackling. Sarah felt adrenaline surge through her like fire, her chance to escape slipping away. Would she stay and fight for her family, or would she flee into the light, haunted by ghosts of her past? The door to the other side loomed threateningly as shadows closed in. What would she choose? The shadows surged forward, a writhing mass hungry for her despair. Sarah felt a scream clawing up her throat as panic gripped her tighter than a vice. "Mia, I'm coming." She launched herself toward the door, but the darkness intertwined around her legs, pulling her back like a sinister vine, viscid and relentless. "Sarah, no." Mia's voice was a desperate plea, echoing through the chaos. Just beyond the veil of horror that separated them, in a split second, Sarah knew she couldn't let herself be consumed. "Fight it! Fight!" she cried out, slashing at the shadows with her bare hands, gasping as a cold wave of dread crashed over her. The memory of her mother's smile blazed in her mind, her warm touch providing a flicker of hope amid the chilling devastation. The shadows twisted as if in pain, screeching in a voice that was achingly familiar. "You think you can break free? You belong to us, Sarah." It felt like 1,000 whispers layered on top of each other, twisting her thoughts into knots. "No," she shouted defiantly, channeling every ounce of strength she could muster. "I will not be your puppet." With one final push, she hurled herself forward, arms outstretched toward Mia. She could feel the pulse of the light behind her, pushing, pulling, urging her to choose. But Mia's face twisted in fear. "Get back. It's not safe." The shadows seemed to shudder at the sound of her sister's voice, creeping closer as if drawn to the very fear that bound them. Sarah could feel their cold, jagged breath on her skin, threatening to seep into her bones. "Together," she screamed, hoping against all odds that they might share the strength of their bond. "We can fight this." Mia hesitated, her eyes wide with horror. "Sarah, help us." The police sent a dagger to Sarah's heart, a reminder of what she stood to lose. The light pulsed violently, brightening as if giving her one last chance to break free. "Take my hand." Sarah stretched out, knowing she would do anything to save her sister from this nightmarish fate. But the shadows roared again, angry and tumultuous, a tempest of anger that rattled the walls of their once happy home. "You can't leave us," it shrieked, clawing at her spirit. The air crackled with chaos, as if a storm was brewing around her. She felt the barrier swell, thickening like molasses, ready to ensnare them both. Sarah swallowed her fear, determination raging within her. "I will not let you take her." With a swift movement she lunged toward the pulsing light, a reckless hope fueling her. The moment her hand brushed against the flickering warmth, a surge of energy enveloped her. She could feel the shadows recoiling, screeching in agony. "Go, Sarah! Run!" Mia cried, tears spilling down her cheeks, blurring the edges of her sister's figure. Sarah's heart tightened, but she shook her head. "No, we go together." A shocking flash of light erupted, blinding her momentarily. She felt the world shift, a violent tug, both of them straining against the shadows that twisted like a living labyrinth around them. Darkness clamored, eager to pull them down, but Sarah grabbed hold of Mia's outstretched hand, their fingers locking together. The warmth of that connection sparked a light greater than she had ever known, pushing back against the suffocating void. "Stay with me," she yelled, her voice stone firm against the rising tide of despair. The shadows howled in fury, swirling and lunging as the bright light intensified. "You can't escape. We have your souls." But just as it seemed the light would swallow them whole, an ear-splitting crack echoed, splitting the air. The barrier separated from the door, both sisters' screams merging with the overwrought wails of the shadows. Then, a deafening silence wrapped around them, and darkness withdrew, revealing a long hallway stretched beyond the door. For a fleeting moment, everything hung still, suspended in time, hearts pounding against the silence. "What now?" Sarah whispered, both terrified and hopeful at the same time. A flicker of doubt crept back in, sending shivers up her spine. The shadows had retreated, but they weren't. Tigon just waiting. They could come back at any moment. With her heart pounding in her chest, Sarah looked at Mia. "We can't go back. We need to keep moving." Mia nodded, eyes wide and searching, the looming fear lurking just out of sight. They could feel it, an unwelcome presence enveloping their journey forward. What horrors awaited them in this unfamiliar realm? They turned to face the expanse of the hallway, stepping cautiously into the unknown. But as they moved deeper into the darkness, the walls whispered again, an insidious echo that chilled their blood. You can never truly escape what lay at the end of the corridor. As they ventured further into the ravenous shadows, a thick tension enveloped Sarah and Mia, gnawing at their determined hearts. The corridor, teetering between light and dark, pulsed with foreboding energy, reminding them that the abyss was all too eager to reclaim its lost prey. "Stay close," Sarah urged, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. They clung to each other, moving like two trembling leaves caught in a restless wind. The hallway narrowed as they pressed on, creeping whispers filling the air, intertwining with their racing thoughts. "We can't turn back," Sarah murmured, half to herself. She was fighting not just the darkness around them, but the memories clawing at her mind, trying to pull her under once more. Suddenly, a flicker of light ignited from the end of the corridor. Hope surged within Sarah. "Mia, look!" But the light flickered erratically, casting long shadows that twisted violently on the walls. It seemed to beckon them, yet carried with it an undeniable aura of danger. "Wait, what if it's a trap?" Mia asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her heart racing with conflicting emotions. A part of her wanted to retreat, to flee into safety, but the other part, a force that felt undeniably powerful, urged her forward. "We have to try." They stepped into the light's embrace, and the shadows recoiled momentarily, shivering and flinching, as if burned by the touch of brightness. They reached the end of the corridor to find a heavy door, seemingly ancient but glimmering feebly, giving off a warmth that called out for attention. "Mia," Sarah whispered, her fingers grazing the door's surface. "This is it." She could feel the trembling beneath her palm, a resonance that echoed the rhythm of their combined hearts. "We can do this," she said, the words firm yet filled with trepidation. "We've already survived the worst." Mia nodded, steeling herself. The solemn silence that loomed around them amplified their heartbeat. With a quiet resolve, Sarah twisted the doorknob, pushing the heavy door open as a rush of air spilled forth. They stumbled into a room flooded with light, blinding and pure. The soft sound of laughter filled the air, swirling around them like a gentle breeze. It was the laughter of children, warm and inviting. But as the light dimmed and their eyes adjusted, dread crept back into Sarah's heart. The room was adorned with photographs, happy smiles enshrined in frames, capturing the very essence of a past life. The joy was palpable, yet twisted into an unbearable nostalgia. In that moment, Sarah felt the weight of the world upon her shoulders. "They're gone." Her voice quivered with sorrow. Mia's expression paled as she observed the familiar faces, her parents, their warm smiles eerily juxtaposed against the stark reality. "We have to move on," she urged, forcing herself to look away. "We can't linger here." But the room wrapped around them like a warm embrace, every memory pulling them back, trying to bind them in place. "No, not again," Sarah cried, her heart racing with urgency. "We refuse to be trapped here." Suddenly, the laughter shifted, twisted into something dark and mocking. Shadows crept back, slowly engulfing the edges of the light, wrapping tendrils around Sarah and Mia. "Join us," echoed the familiar whispers, a haunting chorus that sent shivers racing up Sarah's spine. "You can never leave." "No," Sarah shouted, her voice tearing through the thickening silence as she felt the shadows claw at her spirit. "We are not lost. We are not joining you." In that moment, everything shifted. The light flickered violently as it struggled against the dark. Gritting her teeth, Sarah grasped Mia's hand tightly. "We're stronger together. We will break this." With newfound determination, they both took a step back, charging forward, propelled by the urgency of their bond. They surged, running toward the pulsating light, toward freedom, pushing against the overwhelming pull of darkness. The shadows howled in fury, a cacophony of anger and despair, trying to ensnare them once more. "You will not escape." But their threatening cries only fueled the flames of Sarah's resolution. As they tore through the remnants of darkness, the room exploded in light, illuminating everything in a blinding flash. The shadows screamed, contorting around them, but Sarah felt her spirit soaring, empowered by the truth of her love for her family. And just like that, they burst free, emerging into a vast expanse of white, a bright realm where laughter and warmth flooded their hearts. Staring back into the dim nightmare they had left behind, they could hear the echoes fade, whispers diminishing into silence. They were free, wrapped in the embrace of endless light. "We did it," Mia breathed, her voice a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Yes," Sarah whispered, tears of joy mingling with the remnants of fear. "Together." But there was still a lingering question deep inside her heart. Were their parents still trapped within the shadows? As they stood hand in hand, a gentle breeze brushed against them, as if urging them forward. And so, they took their first steps into the light, knowing they would face whatever lay ahead. Together. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that dive deep into the unknown. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, because every click helps uncover more thrilling tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It's your chance to spread the thrill. Let us keep this journey going. Your support means everything.